This is Ross Hollebon, and welcome to CCOM Backstage. I recently had the honor of interviewing musician Leslie Mendelson. She'll perform on Wednesday, February 26th in the Krannert Room in Clowes Hall at Butler. Thanks for checking out this fun conversation, and enjoy the amazing artist and person that Leslie is. Leslie, welcome to CCOM Backstage, and we can't wait to see you perform on Wednesday, February 26th in the Krannert Room in Clowes Hall at Butler. You've got 4 albums to support, with the most recent being After the Party. Released that during the summer of 24. It is 10 tracks of magic that had me thinking, I don't know, I went as someone who really found their way between the 80s and the 90s. Like, I was thinking Tom Petty. I was thinking Juliana Hatfield. I was thinking just some amazing acts, Kathleen Edwards, things like that. As I'm going through your music, what is After the Party to you?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, hi, Ross. It's good to see you. Thanks for having me. After the Party is a bit of a journey. There's a mix of some of my influences. I never hold back as far as letting genre define me. I just like a good song, or if I get on a vibe, I'm gonna go for it, and I'm not gonna be like, oh, this is a little too country, or this is a little too folk, or this is a little too. When I say modern, I just mean what's that genre from like the late new wave, just like in a way of like or like Elvis Costello would live, or like in that kind of thing. So I just or Joe Jackson or something like that. So I just find myself in that, and I like all the different kind of production styles. And I think it's all tied in because, we had a couple of producers on the record. We had Peter Asher, the great legendary Peter Asher, and then we had somebody, Tyler Chester. And I wasn't sure when I started the record what I was going to do. I did some songs with Tyler, and then I got this opportunity to work with Peter, and I'm just like, but being that I'm the common thread, and then my co-writer, Steve McEwen, who was also part of the production team, like found a way to weave it all together.
And it is like you said, the journey of going through those 10 tracks is amazing. There's 3 videos so far as well. I believe there's only 3. Do you have a favorite music video of those 3?
I think Other Girls, we really put our hearts into that one. Not that we hadn't with the other ones, but that we actually got a little bit of a budget for it, and just had a really good time with lighting and the cameras, and just me playing guitar, and just making a good rock video. I had my girls in the video, and just had a great time.
Is there any Courtney Love homage in that video based on your dress?
PJ Harvey. I mean, those are like the girls that I grew up with idolizing, of just their style, their sound, the way that they would just move and make the coolest videos. And I'm just like, imitation's the biggest form of flattery, I guess.
Yeah. No, I love it. As you're doing that, you mentioned Other Girls. Right out of the gate, like you've got Have a Little Heart, Other Girls, Rock and Roll on the Radio. How do these feed one another? We've talked about that journey, and production-wise, what are these trying to evoke the most to you as you go through, and how does that translate, I guess most importantly for this discussion, how does that translate to your show? When we have a full house at Krannert just soaking this in?
Well, as far as like the writing went, we'll start there. So it always has to start with that. This record was a different tone than my last one. If You Can't Say Anything Nice, that came out in 2020. That felt like, I don't know, dealing with being in a situation, and the heightened anxiety and nervousness of what was happening at that time in society. I mean, I touch on everything from depression to like gun control to, just there's just a lot of opioid abuse, like a lot of like topical things, and somehow like we weaved it in with my co-writer and I, Steve, and when this record, we started writing songs for this record, it was kind of during the pandemic. So it was already like it was like post-apocalyptic at this point. And I wasn't really thinking about being in it, wanting to sing about it. I wanted to sing about like not being in this, you know. So it was more of a dream and more of like thinking forward, thinking to the future, not thinking about like trying to digest all the, well, I was digesting all these feelings, but I don't know, it came out in more of like in a more, I'll say, joyful way, or just acceptance, and then just also just tuning it out and just having a good time, like, you know, songs like Rock and Roll on the Radio, even though it deals with nostalgia, I just it has an uplifting thing to it. And I also think Other Girls, it's a fantasy song. It's like how to deal with jealousy in a cheeky way, you know. And it is a big wink, you know, and not in a wink like, yeah, we're all in it. I'm in on the joke, you know. And yes, it scratches an itch for those who do get it. And then After the Party is just that, I guess the title of the album kind of encapsulates all these feelings of just like a good time was had, you know. So and that song and the album title like was based on a Andy Warhol picture of the same name. I actually have it, not the real one. I got mine off the internet, but I was looking at it during the pandemic, and it's a table that has like just empty glasses and ashtrays, and it looked like a good time was had. And I'm like, I want to be at that party. And so a lot of it is just like taking myself out of the fact that we're in this pandemic. I might not have seen somebody for a week at this point, you know, and so we're just trying to like get out of our heads.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And then the Warhol component, I mean, because we've got Lou Reed, we've got all this New Yorkness and creativity that comes through things. And with you being based in Brooklyn, do you have a favorite place or setting to write lyrics or really be inspired?
No, I pretty much work out of my house. Yeah. But I think it's all of like After the Party is a perfect example of being a New Yorker, and then anybody who either is a New Yorker or been to New York for an extended period of time, we've all had those nights where you're just on one and you don't want it to end because there's just like, you know, we're gonna win the night, and that's what that song is about.
Yeah, and I'm going to this show and I expect to win the night on February 26th
We're
as
gonna
well.
we're gonna win that night.
Yeah, no, I feel it already, and so geeked about that. Talking about other influences and just cool nod and winks, like you've
Yeah.
played with Crimson and Clover gets mentioned. It's a Tommy James and the Shondells original, but what stands out to me as an East Coaster is the Joan Jett and the Blackhearts cover.
That's the greatest. Yeah. Yeah, it just felt like the chords were just I just went there. It just made sense. But the jukebox is playing Crimson and Clover, yeah. And then la 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 la.
Yeah, but it's like rugged and beautiful all at the same time, and that is like the perfect summation, I think, of so much of this album and your approach to it. Is there a moment you remember while making this that you thought, "Oh, this is different, and I can't wait to play this track live"?
Nothing in particular, just the whole thing. Like one of my favorite songs after the party is The Good Life. And to me that's like then that's my little nod to Glenn Campbell and that kind of country music from the 70s, like Waylon Jennings and stuff. And that song is so much fun to play live. First of all, it makes people smile because and people always tell me like that the people that like the song and listen to the lyric, that it meant something to them. Won't you cut yourself some slack, pour yourself a drink when you're feeling at your worst? You're doing better than you think. And people have like said that they've listened to that during a hard time, and that just like, so there's that moment I get to like sing that line, and I just feel very connected to people because we've all been there, whether you're going through it now or you've been there or you're going to go through it again. And for some reason, the way that it grooves, like I just played a few shows this weekend. Steve and we went out, and it's nice when the two of us play. But then when I have the band, which I'm playing with this week, there's something about the bass and the drums and the groove of that song that's really fun to play.
Love that. And now, when you're here in Indianapolis at Butler, will you have the full band, or is it you and Steve?
I'm probably going to just be duo since
Okay.
we travel light, but we pack a punch.
Yeah. And it's a great venue for that as well.
Yeah, we talk a lot.
Awesome.
It's just like
It's that good conversational banter that goes on.
Yeah. We give it. I don't know. We had a good time this weekend, and the audiences have been great too. So like the more it just goes back and forth, and then by the end we're all just shouting at each other and having a good time. And let me not shouting, but you know what I mean. It's that's the fever pitch I'm looking for. I want to just like have everybody feeling free. That it's like just become we're all in it together.
Well, and being in it as well. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording. We lost just an incredible artist who's mainly known as a filmmaker, television storyteller, but who music was incredibly important to in David Lynch and the dreaminess of Twin Peaks. But to me, this album also hits everything that I think Lynch would love and would have loved to have one of these tracks during that revisited Twin Peaks season. Talk about the dreaminess component of what you've put together.
Well, so far we've talked about side one. We've actually gone through all of side one, leaving off with The Good Life. And then you turn the album over, and there are the three songs that Tyler Chester produced. It's Keep a Little Light On, Signs of Life, and My Own Worst Enemy. Those to me, and I kind of make a joke, be like, whatever you took before the show should be kicking in right now.
Yeah.
And these songs are definitely trippier and dreamier, and the production gets a little bit more wild. And Signs of Life was almost going to be the title of the record, because I was thinking, it's kind of feeling like you're on another planet looking for life. And that's how I think we all were feeling at some point. And this is not a pandemic record, but it happened to be written during it. but yeah, there is just like, I think I drew a lot of like on my influences, like with David Bowie, especially for Signs of Life. It's that chorus was very inspired by his interstellar kind of atmosphere that he creates, and I love that so much. And David Lynch, like, he was a master at creating atmospheric, just just creating an atmosphere that felt like you were somewhere else. He took you on a journey, and I love that you felt that through these songs, because they definitely have that element. These, especially this little section of the record.
Yeah, and that's fun. Like celebrating an album, like so much is singles these days. And hey, I'm going to download this, or I'm going to put this single on a playlist, and you kind of lose the art of the complete album here. So that's one of the things that was so fascinating going through this is, it went from a kind of rubbing shoulders to a hug by the end of it. And that was just so fantastic to feel in the music, in the lyrics, and everything that are happening there. But I think it also ties into the universal approach of some of your messaging. And we also talked a little bit about, again, talking about our media world and how it all ties in together, getting that feeling of Bob Dylan and knowing that we both just saw A Complete Unknown starring Timothy Chalamet, who did, I thought, a brilliant job.
I think so too.
Talk about that music. How true is that music scene? Knowing that some of this film was sensationalized and things like that, but you're living this music scene in New York in a different time period, but it's still putting yourself out there. It's putting these heartfelt songs that you're writing at home. What elements of A Complete Unknown tie into your experience with music in New York?
Well, when I first came to New York, there was a scene in the West Village. There was a songwriting group that was run by Jack Hardy. He used to run Fast Folk, and it was this magazine in, I guess, I don't know when it started, but it was definitely like 70s, 80s, 90s, and a lot of the songwriters from New York went through this group, like Suzanne Vega, Richard Julian, David Chandel. David Van Ronk was like friends with Jack Hardy. I mean, they were like these, and Jack was already older by the time I moved to the city, like in the early, like, I don't know, mid 2000s. And but he was living in this apartment that he'd invite everybody to come in. He'd cook this big bowl of pasta. Everybody would drink wine, and then you'd bring your song in, and everybody would sit around this every Monday night. And this was like one of those tenement kind of old school. They showed it basically in the movie, that kind of thing. Like the sink is, there's the bathtub was in the kitchen, kind of, apartment, and fantastic apartment.
New York living, right?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And that's I don't know. I know he passed away some years ago now, but I'm so fortunate to have had that group, because you had everybody. You had some legends there bringing these songs in that you just couldn't believe what you're listening to. People that were okay. I felt like I was somewhere in the spectrum. I wasn't the worst, I wasn't the best, but I felt good enough and accepted to be there. And then we'd all go over to the Ear Inn. It's called the Ear Inn because I think it used to have a B. It's a BAR, but the B's, like, they fizzled out. It just became the Ear. And
Awesome.
this bar it's been there since the 1800s. It was actually right before they expanded the West Side Highway. It was right on the water. And so that's how old it is. And then we'd go there for drinks, and everybody would have their whiskey or whatever, and just, pontificate on, current topics and politics of the day. And it just felt like I was so glad I got that as like a really early New York experience for me. And I felt like I felt like this is where it happened, the folk scene. And it was like the end of an era, but I caught a little bit of it.
Yeah, but getting in there and even being in, and I guess this is a little bit of a tie today, and I don't even know if they have a print version anymore. But I read a review of the album on No Depression, of the folk world, of singer-songwriters that are coming up. And again, they were kind of talking that same way of, this is the folk movement. This is folk-infused rock and roll. Yes.
And let me say this. I don't mean in the end of an era like it's over. I just meant that particular time in New York. It is, like, I think that building's might still be there. It might be gone, might be a bank, like that, in that sense. But no, I think there's a whole scene right now of folk singers that are just great, and it's amazing. And I'm glad to be a part of whatever it is right now that's happening.
Yeah. Well, and to me, again, that's your artistry here, and that's what you're putting out there, because and it is expressed in the album of, I'm feeling this here, and the different producer being involved, where, hey, this might be a little dreamy, this might be a little more pop, this is elevated rock and roll here, and just kind of moving through each of those. So I think it's awesome not to jump into a label, but to let people kind of play with it, where, I don't know if anyone's ever told you Juliana Hatfield before.
No.
as they're talking
I
about your
like
album. But like,
it.
that was one of the first names that popped in my head, of, oh, I'm catching a piece of this here. Not that you sound like that, but there are just like little elements where I'm just like, oh, this is taking me here. This is taking me there. And I think that translates to such an incredible live performance, and that's why I'm so excited about February and getting to see the two of you up there perform for an audience at Butler.
Yeah. My sentiments exactly.
Excellent. Well, let me, Leslie, give you an opportunity. Is there anything more that you really want to hit on here? Anything that you want to share? Any next projects coming up? Are you already writing as you're going through this process? And does that become sort of a thing as you're touring?
I'm thinking of doing something like a covers record because I've never done that before. And I'm a big fan of Randy Newman and Harry Nilsson. And there's something about their style of music that I just love. I grew up listening, playing piano. And so I was thinking of doing something like that, a little bit more of a classics kind of record. So I'm working on something like that right now. But yes, there'll be more writing and just more of more.
That is fantastic. So, all right, Leslie, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
This is a
So nice
blast.
to meet you.
Yeah, super cool to get to talk to music with someone who's doing it and who is making an impact. And I can't wait to see how far this album kind of keeps going as more and more people get introduced to it. So thank you for supporting it with live dates and,
Oh yeah.
traveling around.
Thanks so much, and I really look forward to meeting you. And we're gonna have a good time.
The house lights are now up on our conversation with Leslie Mendelson. Hopefully you loved what you heard, and we'll see you on Wednesday, February 26th at 7:30 p.m. for Leslie's intimate concert in the Krannert Room in Clowes Hall. It's an intimate, cool venue and one of the best kept secrets on campus for now, so don't wait to get your tickets. And follow the Butler Arts and Events Center on Instagram at Butler Arts Events Center to learn more about everything going on at BAEC. Go Dogs and support artists and live events at the Butler Arts and Events Center.
'Cause I love the sound of